Hi everyone. So this video is going to be about exploring texture through experimental mark making. I've got here a selection of stuff that I've just found around the home, and I'm sure you have all sorts of bits and pieces lying around that you could use to make marks with. Here's an old peg, some cork, cotton buds, I've got a toothbrush here, a little comb, a paint scraper, which is hard. This is a bit softer, just a bit shrub from outside, sponge, just a mixture of bits and bobs really. And then I have some acrylic paints to hand in case I want to use some colour. My watercolour palette is always close by, as well as I always have some wax crayons close by. And drawing ink. Drawing ink is a really good place to start, and it's good to start with some monochrome, I think, there's so much variation in the marks that you make that it's quite nice to see that monochrome, so it's not like too overwhelming really. But I'm just going to start by dabbing this cocktail stick, kebab stick, sorry. Dipped it in the ink and I'm just dab, 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 dab. Now, I'm not trying to achieve a specific look or trying to represent something. I'm literally just making marks with whichever instrument I have. And I'm gonna just vary up the instruments, as well as varying how I use them. So that was, I used the same movement there, and I'm just dabbing it. I'm holding out the brush at the end, and look at the complete variation in marks. And there's a really lovely texture going on here when the ink is running out on the brush, which I really like. You can see if you start to put them in a bit of a pattern as well, going back to last week's workshops, that you start to see something in it. You could be maybe rotating those. It's running out a bit too much, but it could potentially start to look like a flower, or show you, we could add some intentional sort of, you can create tools to mark make with. In this case, I've got a number of cotton buds tied together just with a little bit of string. I've just dipped them in my ink, and I'm gonna just see what happens when I press them on the paper. And I really like that actually, because of how irregular it is. So every time I'm pressing down on the paper, they're either splaying away from each other, or one's been pushed up and one hasn't. So you're getting a nice sort of pattern going on there, but it's irregular, so the texture has a little bit, more depth. And you might want to do that again with some colour. I'll leave that to you to have play with that. Like maybe lots of shades of the same colour might build up to a really lovely textural and create a lot of depth to an art piece. So another intentional kind of mark making tool that I've created here is super simple. I've just got a block of wood and I've put string around it again. String's pretty handy, and I'm just going to put a little bit of ink on the end, and I'm just going to press it on there, and that's quite lovely. So it's picking up the fibres on the string, but you could easily see how that could, it's like rope. or like, you know, it could be fences, or let's see, taking it back a step and just, this might be a bit too much ink actually. Take some off on the sponge first. It's always good to have some, like a baby wipe or kitchen roll or something close by as well, because it can get very messy. So just going in here, oh, that's really, really nice. Sometimes you don't know what you're going to get, but this is just the wood grain. And making a really lovely texture there. I mean, I can see that it could be like a ploughed field rode up in a picture. More string, but this time on a piece of cork. See what we've got here. Lovely. Tools have always got, you know, you can use them in different ways. I've got another cork here, and this time I've pressed holes into it just with the end of that kebab stick that you seen me use earlier. Again, I'm just putting some ink on. But do feel free to, you know, experiment with different, with this, with, you know, you could be doing this with paint as opposed to ink. I think I've got an uneven table there, just, but that's really nice. Again, that could be the center of a plant. If I drag that, what happens? I'm going to try just taking my brush again. That all felt a little bit controlled, so I'm just going to go crazy and do some splatters. Let go. Make a mess. Remember what it's like to be a child and not worry about cleaning something up. Get lost in it. So I've just got my toothbrush here now. I'm just seeing what sort of effect that has, and I don't really want to take away from all these splatters because I like them a lot, but see what happens if I dip the paintbrush in. So I'm just out of shot, dipping it in the ink. Definitely a different quality to using a paintbrush. Apologies if that's not quite in shot. Now this is it's got the end here is a bit higher, so you've got to think how to use it. You know, change the direction. That's nice. Let's see. Let's add a bit more ink there. That's lovely. See how the closer I go, the more intense and kind of solid and bold and opaque that texture is, and then the further out you've got this lovely sort of grainy effect, and it's really quite sporadic and energetic. And you know, texture can be used in like that. You know, if you add a little slight grain to it, it can give the sense of a time gone past, or you know, it's like looking at an old film when it flickers. It's a bit grainy and it flickers a little bit. It actually adds to the quality of the image that you're looking at, and it really takes you to a different time. Well, that's interesting. So I've pretty much made use of that whole page. Just seeing what else I have in there. I think I'm gonna flip onto a new page. Oop. And I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm just thinking about these sort of drawn marks and different textures that you'd be maybe thinking about trying to replicate. So it might be, this works quite well as grass, or see, the other end might be better. Or perhaps fur or hair, you might want to be representing that. Yeah, so a good thing to do if you're mark making, you get a nice big sheet of paper. Tell you what's really good for that, like some lining paper or something. If you've got that lying around, a big roll of it, get it out, cover the table, and stick some music on, and just move in response to the music, you know, and change it up. Like try different tempos. Try some things that, you know, you might get something, you know, you could end up just sort of dancing across the page really, or other things that might make you respond in a way that's quite jagged or angular. Okay, so here I've just got a clipping from a shrub from the garden, and that's making a really nice texture actually. I like that a lot. Ooh, I think I'm getting to the end of my ink. No more mark making for me. Let's see. What else have we got here? I might just then, because I'm running out of ink, I'm going to take the acrylic and straight onto the page. That's quite nice, just using the end of the tube. Quite nice. I can see how that effect could be used maybe to represent some stones or shingle at a beach, or maybe something scaly, or it's a very nice texture. I'm just going to see what happens when I drag this. You win some, you lose some sometimes. That wasn't that exciting. I use a different colour now. Straight onto the page, no messing around here. Take my paint scraper. And I'm just going to scrape it smooth. In fact, I'm going to scrape it back and show you that lovely texture there. Almost looks like water, like a pool you jump right into. You can change that up by just changing the movements as you scrape by. You know, don't scrape quite as much off. Acrylic's great for this, as it does dry quick, but you've still got plenty of time to play around with it. I'm just going to scrape that off there, and I'm going to add another colour on top. Before I do that, I'm just going to get rid of this one a bit, so maybe see how else. I'm going to take this little brush for someone's moustache. I don't think it was ever used for that purpose, but it's very good for this. And you see that, how you get that really nice ridged texture, which is almost, you know, it's 3D. Really nice. Again, you could see how, you know, adding a bit of movement to that, you could easily be creating sort of like the look of grass or fields of wheat or something, or under the sea and in a pond life. You can scrape away in other ways, so again this cocktail stick is quite handy. I don't know if you can hear that rain, it's really going for it out there. What else do we have? I've got my cardboard. I think I'm going to put a little bit more ink on that and just see. Back to the stamping. You can get some interesting things going on there. Or I'm going to take my favourite, which is the wax crayon. That feels quite good, just scribble on there, see what happens. Not a huge amount with the ink. That's better. You see that nice resist? So, a little bit too much ink there. Let's get something soft. Well, that's lovely. Sort of more mottled effect. And the sponge, it's pretty obvious really, but I think it's all too easy when you're looking to create something or recreate something, a scene that you might have liked, to just get kind of stuck using the paintbrush, you know, having your and the paint palette. But there's so many ways to really add depth and value to your pictures by changing how you apply your mediums. You see that super smooth, could never have achieved that. It almost looks like with a regular paintbrush, I don't think, with watercolour perhaps, but that's ink. But it's really, this is really at one with the paper itself, and it really makes this stand out. And I think that's a lovely, these softer textures when they're used in an art piece again can really, well, maybe not in black, but give that sense of kind of romanticism or nostalgia as well. I'm just going to take one more thing here, and I'm just going to make this nice and wet. And I'm going to drop some coffee on and let it do its thing. Again, I said one more thing, a couple more things. Tea bag. This one must have been brewed for a while, there's not much left in there. But it's just an old classic, isn't it? Oh look, I've got some really nice swirly things going on with that coffee. You know, how would you represent water? Fluid textures. It's quite a tricky one to capture, but this has certainly got me thinking along those terms and inspire me to do something that it's like a rock pool or something. That's what it's making me think of. One last one. We're doing some sponging, so I'm going to do some with this as well, I think. Now hopefully you can see, again, just cover that page. As messy as this is, just how many different ways that you can use these tools to create different interest. And now I'm going to, in the next video, show you a little bit about how to create tactile textures. So this has been about doing exploring the visual texture. So texture that looks a certain way, but actually when you go in to feel it, it will just feel like a smooth page. With the exception to some of this acrylic, but certainly this here, rather than things looking like you could really feel them, they're just smooth. So in the next piece we're going to do some working with the surfaces and adding some textural interest that way.